years now. This is just an amazing walk with him, getting to know his family, getting to walk with his family. It's an incredible opportunity, really, to be able to share him with everybody else. So I'm so happy to be able to be back here again 4 years since he ran this last time, and this time this run's going to be successful. So, yeah! And thank you for joining us tonight as we kick this off. I'd like to introduce Jeff Cole to do the invocation for tonight's event.
Would you bow your head in prayer, please? Gracious and sovereign God in heaven, we come before you tonight with grateful hearts, grateful for your sovereign care, grateful for this nation you have blessed, and grateful for the men and women who stand watch over our communities. As Romans 13 teaches, there is no authority except from God, and those who serve in authority are your ministers of God for good. We honor these ministers who daily choose courage over comfort and duty over ease. Lord, we thank you for the United States of America, for the freedoms you have endowed us with, and for the Constitution that recognizes and secures these rights. We ask that you strengthen those who enforce our laws, give them discernment rooted in truth, integrity anchored in righteousness, and companion shaped by the Word of God. Protect every officer here tonight, guard their minds from discouragement, their bodies from harm, and their families from fear. Lastly, we pray for our nation, that we would repent of our evil ways and with humility turn our hearts unto God. Raise up leaders who honor your truth, uphold righteousness, protect the liberties you created in us. May those who wear the badge be instruments of peace, order, and moral clarity in a world that rejects both. Bless this food, bless our fellowship, and bless the work ahead. May everything we do tonight bring glory to you, the author and liberty, and giver of every good gift. In the mighty name of Jesus Christ, our Lord, I pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right, thank you very much. So I would just like to talk a little bit about Rick. We've had an opportunity really just to get to know his family. We've gone to church with him. He's been in this church out here for longer than we were. My wife and I moved out here from Virginia in 2009 as we first met Rick. And he's just really, to me, been the kind of guy that has always put God first in his life. He's put God first in his family. He's put God first in his vocation. This is something that he doesn't just say, it's something that he does. He's volunteered tremendously in our church, and he and Heather have been running the campaign that we have that we call Hope Worldwide that really tries to do so much for people in our community and people all around the world that are in need of help. And that's just the kind of person that Rick is. He's been this amazing servant of God ever since I've known him. He spent a full career in the U.S. Navy and retired as a lieutenant commander, doing amazing things there, rose up through the ranks from enlisted all the way up through his officer ranks. His men loved him. I was a part of his retirement ceremony and got to see so many people that he knew, that he walked with, and that he got to influence over the years. And it's just an honor to get to be here tonight and just kick off his campaign for Sheriff this year.
Yes,
so I'd like to introduce our next speaker. It's Dan Griffey. Dan is a state representative representing the 35th District, which includes Mason County and parts of Kitsap County and Thurston counties. He's committed to serving the people of the 35th District and the state of Washington by developing real solutions that improve lives. In addition to serving in House leadership as the Republican whip, Dan serves on 3 House committees. He's the assistant ranking member of the Community Safety Committee, where he advocates for sexual assault and domestic violence survivors and works to strengthen public safety by supporting law enforcement, prioritizing victims, and making sure criminals are held accountable. He also serves on the local government and transportation committees. A lifelong resident of Allen, Dan began his career of service as a volunteer firefighter at the age of 16 and was one of the youngest EMTs in Washington State at that time. He was hired as a professional firefighter for the Central Basin in 1992 and served for 30 years before retiring in June of 2022. In addition to his legislative work, Dan remains active in the community, volunteering for local causes and organizations. Dan and his wife, Dinah, have 4 children and 5 grandchildren. Please give a warm welcome for Dan Griffey.
So you must forgive me, I have to test the mic out a bit because I hear it squealing in the background and I don't want that to happen, so I gotta find out.
Sound good?
Does it sound good? You can hear? Oh, well,
It'll be better.
what's that? Okay, well, that's fine. I just don't want this to you. Yeah, gotcha. I talk into a lot of microphones and they're all different, so I'll let the technician tell me what to do. Anyway, so my name is Dan Griffey. I do serve in the 35th Legislative District. I have done so for the last 12 years. There are still a few members, people that I see in the room that helped us turn this district red. It was blue for almost 80 years before we turned this district red. I was so committed to take this seat back from that Democrat who voted to suspend the 2/3 majority to raise taxes that I ran 6 years straight. I have something in common with the candidate that we came here to support tonight. I just want to say, and I want to point out, look at this beautiful place that we have here. About 5 years ago, I met 2 very frustrated ladies that run this community center, and they found out I was in the legislature. They wondered if I could help them. We want to save this beautiful building, and you know, the 3 of us in the 35th district, Senator McEwen and myself and Travis Couture, we've dedicated ourselves to making sure that if we can help out our communities, have community centers to where they can reinvigorate community, where they can figure out they can be less reliant on government, because they have a community center where community can get together like we used to and take care of one another. It's a mission of ours, if you will, and I am so proud of that group, what they were able to do with the small amount of money that we gave them. Isn't this a wonderful venue? The 35th district is rural from here, you know, because all of you that from Kitsap County, they keep asking me, where's 35 in Kitsap County? Right here. It goes up to almost Silverdale, right? We go to Rochester in the south, and we have all of Mason County. So we are lucky in 35 that we have one demographic, that's a rural demographic. And they think a lot like us. They think, I think they think like Rick. This district, this area has the largest amount of copper theft between this part of Kitsap County and the close adjacent part of Mason County. Has the largest amount of copper theft in the state of Washington by 10 times. It's because we do not have as many law enforcement officers that can be regularly out watching those happen. You can commit these type of heinous crimes, stealing people's ability to call 911. Yes, out in 35, the rural parts of 35, we don't have fiber optic communication. We have copper line communication, old Ma Bell stuff. When you take 16 or 5 miles of copper, you take away for a long time someone's ability to call 911. Because the other thing that we suffer from out here is we don't have much cellular service. We have a lot of trees, and it's pretty tough with all these trees for us to have a lot of cell service. We all suffered those things together. The other horrible thing about the copper theft is they don't make much copper anymore. Mostly they make fiber. So the utility districts that have to re-establish those services have to wait sometimes a year. And they're fined. Because they're telecommunications providers, they're fined for every day that the service is down. The reason I'm here and the reason I'm supporting Rick is because I think, I heard him the other day, and I've heard him for years, he wants to reestablish community policing, and he wants to enable the communities to take care of themselves. I do believe this place, and a lot of places like this in the 35th and all over Kitsap County, would become community centers that he organizes, that he has community policing activities. I've heard him talk about all of those things. I've heard him talk about getting after crime before somebody becomes a victim. Isn't that a novel idea? Catching the thief that wants to steal someone's telecommunications their ability to call 911. Catching someone before they start a full-blown meth house or a fentanyl distribution area. The horrible thing, the best and worst parts of being rural is you don't have a lot of eyes on you. The reason I like living rural, and I've spent my entire time in a rural area, is because really, I like my thoughts. I like my family's thoughts. I don't like government telling me what I can and cannot do. I've served for 12 years on the Public Safety Committee, and I'll tell you what, it's criminal what they have done to law enforcement in that place. They've made horrible, horrible decisions that not only hurt law enforcement officers, but they hurt the people law enforcement officers swore an oath to protect. They do everything they can in their power to take away law enforcement's ability to proactively go after crime, and they make excuses for every criminal in the state of Washington. You know, I am a God-fearing person, and I put God first in my life, God, family, and country, right? And they all go in a quick succession. God didn't say we should ignore crime. We need to hold people accountable, and I think our good Lord would agree with me. We need to hold people accountable, and once they showed accountability, welcome them back to society with open arms, and I think we can do that when we have a sheriff like Rick. Because of Rick and his faith, I believe he's going to use his faith in his policing. He's going to know when somebody needs to have a hard hammer. He's going to know when somebody needs to be driven to a detox facility. He's going to be able to determine whether somebody needs to go to jail or they need to go to a mental hospital and get fixed. I know this about him because he's a Republican and he's a good person. That have been done to law enforcement, to all of us in Washington State, that hurts our public safety, our predictability in being safe in our community. Even with all of those laws they passed, the sheriff of a county has the ability to set the tone and tenor, and they do not have to rely on all of Washington State's laws. He made a commitment in a speech I heard him talk just the other day about community policing. The state of Washington didn't say that a sheriff, they don't say anywhere what his priorities have to be. The sheriff, the community sets those priorities, and he says that his priority is going to be able to take, he wants to take the diminishing resources they got and devote them to going out and rooting out those hot spots in the county, so those of us that live around here can feel stable and predictable in our lives. And I do believe, if you vote for Rick, that you are going to have and experience what you want to experience, a more safe Kitsap County. My 35th district, Kitsap County residents will have a more safe 35th district. Predictability and stability of one's lives is what community depends on. You know, when I grew up in the little town of Allen, it was about 1976, everybody's moms had to go to work. You know, gas crunch and all that kind of stuff started happening. We're just getting out of Vietnam War. The economy was pretty terrible. My mom had to go back to work. And you know, I like to say I was a little bit Tom Sawyer and a little bit Huck Finn because, you know what, there was only grandmas in that town. Everybody in that town could either put Bactine on my boo-boo or paddle my behind for what I did wrong, and then I'd get my behind paddled one more time when I got home because, well, I'll tell you what, the network was already done. And you know, when you know that the county sheriffs and the county sheriff brings you home and talks to your mom and dad, that might be something, well, maybe, you know, I don't want to talk too much about that, but the community that I grew up in was stable, it was predictable. If our car was missing, because my parents they didn't put keys on in some lockbox anywhere, they put keys in the ignition because if you didn't, we would lose them. If the car was gone, somebody needed it and they borrowed it. If our lawnmower was missing, we never worried about the lawnmower was not going to come back. It was going to come back, it would have been serviced, and it would have come back full of fuel. Well, thank you, no, sorry, Dell, but we needed to mow the lawn, and you know, if you missed it, my dad probably didn't miss it because he was so busy. Until I got old enough to mow the lawn, it didn't get mowed very much. Well, you know, I could talk on and on and on. I think I've talked the length of time that they said they wanted me to talk, but they told me that they wanted me to go first and they needed me to get talk long enough to where they got our dinner set up. I think we got that. Maybe the dinner set up. Well, I think you all, I really would, one last plug. The House Republican Caucus needs your help as well. We have 3 opportunities, real opportunities in Kitsap County to pick up seats to help us out in the legislature. Our governor has stated point blank that he wants a supermajority. That would be the House losing one more seat. He wants a supermajority so he can amend the Constitution without Republican votes. We cannot allow that to happen. We need your support. All of you that are in the 35th, I need you to vote for me and my 2 seatmates. I really need it. I need you to support those other candidates in the 26th legislative district. We really need it. And I'm sorry I failed to mention that we have another sheriff from Pierce County here that follows I think is a trailblazer, and I think Rick is going to model his service after the great sheriff of Pierce County. Thank you all so much for your time, and I'm sorry that if I bored you. I was just delaying.
Before we get there, I just give an opportunity for anyone else that's running for any office here in Washington State. If you could please just stand up. I'll give you a microphone. You can introduce yourself. And with the exception of the people that are speaking tonight, introduce yourself and tell us about your campaign.
Give me a mic. Yep. No, I can just talk about it. I don't have So for those of you that don't know me, I'm Bruce Fox, and I can't tell if I'm working or not working.
Hey.
Virtual.
You already got it.
Testing. Do we need to use the mic? No. from fentanyl overdoses. We've got homeless encampments everywhere. We've got women getting raped in our homeless encampments. Okay. Thank you. I thought I was for myself lost, but at any rate. So all these failed leftist policies have left us with a public safety crisis. We've got a drug crisis. The person that's in the incumbent, Emily Randall, right now, she is anti-law enforcement, anti-police, anti-ICE. And so we have to do something differently from the federal level. And I'm here to say that I support Rick Kuss. I did not know Rick before this campaign cycle. And I've talked with him at length about what he can do for us. And I'm hoping that he gets elected. I'm old enough to remember when we had actual sheriffs in this county. We had Art Morgan, we had Pat Jones, and I want to see Rick do great things for us in Kitsap County and for all across our district. We need more support for law enforcement. You know, we've got the lowest per capita law enforcement officer rate in the whole country. We are dead last, and we have to do something different. There's a lot of stuff that we can do from the federal level, and I will do everything that I can from the federal level when I'm elected to help support law enforcement. Public safety is the #1 priority of our government, and we have to do that. So vote Rick Kuss, vote Fox for Washington. Thank you, guys.
I know there's so much to talk about, and there's some of the finest people that I know in Kitsap County and Pierce County are in this room tonight. I have been encouraged by what I've seen over the last several years with people starting to wake up and realize they must get involved. I can't tell you how much I appreciate Rick standing up and doing it a second time. You know what it's like to run a campaign and put your heart into it and everything else, but I tell you right now, we have the best chance we've ever had of turning things back around to the days of our old sheriffs, Pat Jones, like you said, and Art Morgan and others, that care about the community and are willing to get the community involved. So again, thank you, Rick, for being a part of that. I've watched how you studied it. I think you'll be the finest manager that our sheriff's department has ever seen, and I am so grateful. I am the executive officer for Kitsap Rifle and Revolver Club, and I've also been tasked this last year with being president of Puget Sound Patriots. We have a big fundraising picnic and political picnic coming up, either the 15th or the 22nd. We're still trying to get that date nailed down depending on the availability of our keynote. But that is a huge event. We've had as many, when Colt running ran for office, we had over 405 people there at the picnic. So folks, be looking for the announcement, save the date, and plan on bringing folks for a great time, a family event, and to listen to the candidates so that they can hopefully make a sound decision. So with all that has gone on, one of the things that we've been able to do, because the county has seen to it, and we've got a county commissioner candidate running that I'm looking forward to talking to all the more. Absolutely. As many do know, Kitsap County has sued Kitsap Rifle and Revolver Club twice, and they have us currently under injunction, and we've been shut down for a while, unfortunately. Kitsap Rifle and Revolver Club, this is our 100th year, 1926 to 2026, and we will be back open this year. Either way, I'm shooting out there, so. One of the things that we've been able to do that's been a lot of fun for folks, we at Kitsap, we've done a number of classes. We do level 1 through level 5 handgun classes. Same thing with carbine rifle, competitive shooting, USPSA action shooting, 3-gun shooting. That was my forte. I've taken second twice in the nationals. Always a bridesmaid, never bride. That organization was formed for sport and national defense. They were opened on Armistice Day, or were chartered Armistice Day 1926, which was the celebration of the armistice ending World War I. And we were were dedicated and are dedicated to training people so that ideally it could never happen again, although there's been a war or two in between time. But our organization has been set up to train young men and women and supplementally train the military. Kitsap County has had so much disdain for the military that in the lawsuit they brought against the gun club, one of the things they mandated was we could no longer allow military personnel on our range to train. Absolutely disgusting, but they stand by it today. Your county commissioners do. So we need a change in the county commissioner's seat. But one of the things we do for fun, we have a class called the ZAP class, Z-A-P, Zombie Apocalypse Preparedness. We put together a class for up to 4, and there's one up here for auction. And Jan Smith, Jan's not here tonight, is she? Jay Kelly, excuse me. Put up the hors d'oeuvre side of it, and it is at her private range that she has management rights to.
Nice.
But this class is a class for up to 4 people. We will provide, as necessary, all firearms and ammunition, although whoever takes it is encouraged to bring what it is they're going to rely on at home, because that's what you need to work with. This class will take anybody from absolute novice to advanced, and we can get you something for it. Rick's even taken it once, didn't you, Rick? Although he could have taught it, I think.
So I
Kitsap County is one of the things I hope to see with the change in our county sheriff is that, and Rick is aware, do you know that your Kitsap County deputies do not take an oath to uphold the Washington State Constitution? What? They take an oath to uphold Kitsap County Code. That's a fact, folks. Look it up. I was really shocked to hear that. Your Constitution, your state Constitution, and for those that are maybe not real aware, the purpose of our government, the only purpose of our government is to do, there's 5 words at the end of Article 1, Section 1, protect and maintain individual rights. That's your right to protect yourself. That's the right to get training. That's the right to run a business as you choose to. I mean, realistically, the way our founders set it up, as long as you're not harming somebody else's life, liberty, or property, you should be able to do whatever it is the good Lord puts in your mind to expand and explore. Amen. We need to get back to that. So anyway, again, to help Rick out and help others out, we offer this class. It's a lot of fun. Jan Kelly really puts on a really nice feed and a little fine wine afterwards. We sit around a fire pit and do a little debrief, if you will. We talk about identification of zombies properly. And those that actually finish and pass will get a zombie hunting permit. So anyway, folks, again, what's that? What's the value? Well, depends on where you go. $1,200 is what we have gotten for it, and if somebody wanted 4 hours of individual training for up to 4 people, we supply firearms and ammunition. That's a bargain at any price, much less with what Jan Kelly has. I think we've got it started at $500 over there, and again, we haven't done this for money. Sharon and I, one of our other co-instructors, my wife right there, also an officer with Kitsap Rifle Club. Not only Kitsap Rifle Revolver Club, they attacked me personally. They came after me for 13 years trying to get me for a felony on a type of firearm that I have. I like firearms that go really, really fast. And that's because I play in sports that you need firearms that go really, really fast. Even though that was all dropped and everything else gone on there, a lot of folks don't know when they attacked Kitsap Rifle Revolver Club, they didn't just attack the gun club. The title of the first lawsuit was Kitsap County versus Kitsap Rifle and Revolver Club and Sharon Ann Carter. They went after her to get to me. It's a lawyer trick to get husband and wife doing this. Hopefully it falls apart on them. But let me tell you something, they picked on the strongest woman I've ever met. Still active and going, but we are processes of finishing even what I feel should not have been necessary, but all of the permit requirements that the county wants. So we would appreciate your help in that vein, but know today that no matter what it happens to be, we'll train people for free. But this is to put Rick in office. So folks, take advantage of it. I guarantee you, you're going to have a good time. I guarantee you're going to learn something that you didn't know before. And we put that man in office where it's going to be the first step of helping Kitsap County get back on the right track of protecting individual rights.
Thank you, Marcus. Yeah, please stop by and sign up. There are 4 auctions over there. Marcus is one of them. There's an auction over there for some estate planning, wills, powers of attorney, that kind of thing. That only started at $100, and it's definitely worth a lot more than that. Rick and Heather are doing a murder mystery event at their house, which is really cool. We've had a chance to see that before. So that's one of them. And then there's an opportunity to go over and make some cocktails or mocktails. If you buy the alcohol, I think they'll make cocktails out of them. So please just take a look at that and please sign up for those. This is a really great way to raise some money for Rick so that he can support this campaign and become the next Kitsap County Sheriff. Thank you for your attention so far. I'd like to next introduce Judge David Stearns. He's a husband, a father, grandfather. Stevens. I'm sorry, I said Stearns. Wow. Judge David Stevens. He's a husband, father, grandfather, Superior Court judge, and Navy veteran. After graduating from high school, David joined the Navy and served on the USS Camden in Bremerton, Washington as a fire control technician, second class. During his service, he saw what true lack of opportunity looks like and learned firsthand why America is the greatest country in the world. During his service, he was awarded 2 Good Conduct Medals, a Meritorious Unit Citation, Armed Forces Expeditionary Medal, and the Armed Forces Expeditionary Medal was for service during Operation Earnest Will. After finishing his Navy enlistment, David received an honorable discharge. The Navy taught him self-discipline and how to serve with honor. Using the Veterans Education Assistance Program, he went to the University of Washington and earned a bachelor's degree of arts in focusing on race and ethnic relations. He was first in his extended family to get a college degree. While getting his college degree was one of his and his parents' dreams, the most important thing he did at the University of Washington was meet his future wife, Pamela Zerk. Pam had her bachelor's degree in linguistics from the University of Washington and is an honorably discharged Navy veteran as well. After graduating from UW, David worked for the Department of Housing and Urban Development as a federal civil rights investigator in the Fair Housing Enforcement Center in Seattle. He was originally hired under the Outstanding Scholar Program. He made sure that people weren't denied housing because of their race, religion, family status, or disability. Working at HUD gave him a passion for fighting for what's right. David then went to the University of Washington School of Law. He did well and was awarded the Mary Ellen Krug Scholarship for the law student showing exceptional promise in litigation. UW Law knew that David would be a trial attorney. After graduating, David went on to be the chief public defender for the Colville Confederated Tribes, a senior deputy prosecutor for the Mason County Prosecutor's Office, a special assistant U.S. attorney, federal prosecutor in the Eastern District of California, and an international prosecutor in Pristina, Kosovo, and a justice advisor in Afghanistan. In November of 2023, Judge David Stevens was overwhelmingly elected to Mason County Superior Court. He defeated the incumbent who had been appointed by then-Governor Jay Inslee, and in 2024, he was reelected. Judge Stevens is currently a candidate for Washington State Supreme Court Justice Position 3. So please make a warm welcome for Judge David Stevens.
So it should surprise you the most is there's 2 good conduct medals. So, for one thing, I have to put it on the record, I am not here to support a partisan position, okay? Because that would get me in trouble with the Judicial Conduct Commission. You're on my own candidate path. But I'm going to talk a little bit about my experience with law enforcement. But first I'm going to say, Dan, you were the one that talked me into running for judge.
You're welcome, Judge.
So you should be held accountable. Because I'm about holding people accountable. So, 37 years ago, I had an interview scheduled with the Seattle Police Department to be a police officer. And boy, was I nervous. Because I didn't know if I could do that kind of job. I mean, I just, to be a patrol officer in Seattle. But luckily, I got a call from the federal government. They offered me a job that paid more. So I did not go down that road. But I went to UW Law School, did well. Like you just read, they knew I was going to be a trial attorney. So I wanted to do real estate law because you know what? I thought there was some money in that. But then somebody offered me a job to be a prosecutor. And so I called my professor of criminal law, and she had been a public defender for King County. She was ultra low. She did not like me at all. Okay. I was president of the Federal Society in law school. That's the conservative group, conservative and libertarians. It's a debate society, so don't believe what they say in the newspapers. It's a secret cabal of conservative attorneys or anything like that. It's a debate. We actually, the Federal Society will get conservatives and liberals. They're the best in their field, and they'll argue things, and then we'll all listen to that. And they'll write law review articles and things like that. So she didn't like me. I got this job as a prosecutor. And I called her up and I said, how do you be a good prosecutor? And she was silent because she did not want to give me any advice. But she had some integrity. And she said, you know what? There's 2 things you got to do to be a good prosecutor. First, you have to go to trial. And I said, prosecutors always go to trial. That's what prosecutors are famous for. And she goes, no, prosecutors cut deals. That's all they are, is deal makers. They only go to trial when they have to go to trial. And I said, oh, okay. And then the second thing she said was, you have to do appeals. And I said, appeals? And she said, yeah, because there's things that happen in the trial court that you'll never understand unless you do appeals. So when I became a prosecutor, I was determined to go to trial. And in my first 18 months as a prosecutor, I went to trial 25 times. Now, you don't have any context for that. But over the course of me being a prosecutor, I went to trial more than 200 times. 200 times I argued to a jury felony trials. Now, a hard-charging prosecutor that really wants to go to trial, if they've done 50, they're doing pretty good. If they've done 100, wow. If they've done 200, they develop a twitch that never goes away. And I've got that twitch. So I went to trial. And you know what? I got to work with law enforcement a lot. And people would always say, wow, Dave, you're so great at trial. And you know what? I always said, if law enforcement does a really good investigation, if they really document an investigation well, and then they investigate possible defenses. See, this is where I think law enforcement officers sometimes fall a little short. Because the defendant will make some outrageous claims or something like that. The law enforcement officer, he's at the scene, he sees what's going on, or she sees what's going on, and they know it's total BS. So they don't investigate it. But you know that defense attorney is going to make a lot of hay out of it. They're going to create reasonable doubt. Well, why didn't the officer investigate that? And so I was really lucky. I got to train some law enforcement officers. And I got really good at it. In fact, in Spokane, they created what they called the Repeat Offender Program. They got a federal grant, and so they identified the worst of the worst. I'm not talking about, I'm talking about the car thieves, the burglars, the ones where you could actually look at the neighborhoods that they were living in, and you could actually see when they were in jail, crime would go down in that neighborhood. And so they created this program, the rope program, and I always used to laugh as we're just giving them enough rope to hang themselves. And we went to trial. I used to joke that if you committed jaywalking, I'm sending you to prison. And they used to, and they gave me the nickname after a while of No Deal Day. Because I said, they would say, the defense attorneys would say to me, well, we'll just take that to trial. And I would say, oh, we were always going to trial. We're always going to trial. The only way we're going to stop not going to trial is your client's going to plead as charged. Now, we can talk about all of the sentencing alternatives that are developed and things like that. And so that was my experience as law enforcement. And I developed a solid relationship with law enforcement. In fact, I knew that I had a solid relationship with law enforcement when they started inviting me to their barbecues, which are crazy, and to their weddings. And I really enjoyed that. But then I made the mistake of running as a Republican for Spokane County prosecutor because I didn't think it was fair that if you hit my desk, you were likely going to prison. You were going to be held accountable. You hit the desk of the prosecutor next to me, maybe you'd get a misdemeanor. You just plead it out. And I said, there's got to be some consistency. And so I ran for prosecutor. Obviously, I did not win that. And so then I became a public defender. And then, and I would tell my clients too, they would say, we hear you're really good. And I'd say, well, I'm only good if the prosecutor isn't. And so I started going to trial as a public defender, and I was winning way more cases than I should have. And there was this one prosecutor, and he'd say, I love going to trial against you, Dave, because I always learn things. And so we'd go have beers and cigars afterwards, and I'd tell him, this is what you should have done, man. This is how you should have prosecuted this case. And so I did that for a while, and then went to Afghanistan, lived there for a while, and we trained the judges and watched the corruption, and we knew that they weren't going to change their system. They were going to adopt a Western judicial system. And then I became a prosecutor, and I was seconded to the European Union as an international prosecutor in Kosovo. And I actually got a case to trial, which is very rare, and usually they're just doing paper exercises. I actually got it, and I won. I got in all the European press for winning the case. And so I get a call, and they want me to come back to the States. And so I ended up working for the Ute tribe in Vernal, Utah as their chief prosecutor. And I got a call from Mason County. And so Mason County, I put in an application like a couple of years before, and their senior deputy prosecutor was retiring, and they needed somebody who could do murder trials and rape trials and things like that. And so I went, my wife Pam over there, and I said, how would you like it if I made less money, worked a lot harder, was here all the time, and we lived on the west side, which is full of godless communists. And so I said, well, that doesn't sound so great. And I said, well, it is Mason County where our oldest daughter, Samantha, lives, and 3 grandchildren. And she said, take it. So I ended up in Mason County, just going about my job, prosecuting cases, building up a solid reputation as a guy who went to trial and held people accountable. And so, you know what really annoys me about a prosecutor is when a prosecutor tells me they've never lost a case. And you think, oh, wow, you must be really good. No, you never took chances. You never had cases where the evidence was there, but it was going to be really hard. And maybe you weren't going to get it. Or maybe it was a case that needed to be tried because it was a really bad guy with a terrible history. And you know what? I had guys who, I didn't even win the case, but they were so scared to death that somebody would actually hold them accountable, that they actually reform their ways. There's this one guy I prosecuted, and this is when drugs were illegal. So I'll talk to you a little bit about that in a minute. he'd cut deals, and never did any time or anything like that. And I was like, nope, you don't get deals with one deal big. So I took him to trial. I got him convicted, and his name was Otto. And so about a year later, I'm walking into the courthouse, and I see him in line. He dressed distinctively, so you knew this guy. And I'm walking past him, and I just think to myself, Jesus, you're back. And I shouldn't have done this because I was a prosecutor, and if he was being prosecuted, you're not supposed to have personal contact with him. I turned around and I said, why are you here, Otto? And he said, you know what? You prosecuting me changed my entire life. Amen. You know what? I cut deals, and part of my probation was always to get drug treatment, but I just blew it off because they knew they weren't going to do anything about it. And then you did it, and you actually made them make me do it. And Mr. Stevens, I'm here to get a marriage license. And I went to his wedding. See, this is a weird thing about criminals. They do want to be held accountable. They think the system's a joke. And if we're not going to be serious and hold them accountable, then they are not going to change. But when you hold them accountable, the ones that can be saved will reform. We're all, I assume, we all believe in redemption. We can all change. You read your Bible, full of sinners that did God's work, that changed when God entered their life. People are capable of change. But you know what? I keep hearing from law enforcement, and it's true, that the jails have become basically mental health facilities now and stuff like that. But what happens when you incentivize people saying that they have a mental health problem, instead of saying, listen, you did this, you got to be held accountable for this, you got to either go to jail or you got to go to prison. Instead, we tell them, no. If you got a mental illness, no, we're not going to, no, we're going to get you treatment and stuff like that. So right now we have the mental health sentencing alternative. So if you committed a crime, the mandatory sentence is 5 years because you used a gun. And, wait, you've got a mental illness now that was undiagnosed? Yeah, I wonder how much of the situation we have with the drug problem and everything like that, when you incentivize people to say the reason they're doing everything they're doing is because of the drugs and because of mental illness. You're taking away their agency. You're saying, no, you can't be held accountable. It's not your fault. I wonder, maybe that's not a way we should go down. So let me tell you about why I'm running for state Supreme Court. I was a prosecutor during the meth epidemic, and I prosecuted a lot of cases. I mean, you wouldn't believe, literally thousands of cases. And the statute 6950-401 had been before the state Supreme Court twice in the 40 years. In 40 years, it had been in front of the state Supreme Court, and they said, no, this is fine. And then a few years ago in the Blake decision, they said, no, that we don't like the disparate impact that it has on minorities. And so it has always been unconstitutional. I cut deals. We had to re-sentence people. We had to refund money. We had to give up all kinds of resources. I've heard it's more than $100 million, this thing. And now you go to Seattle and places like that, and you see open drug use. We have it in Shelton, Washington, in our park. You can watch. I'm with the VFW. We go to our VFW hall, and because it's next to the park, there's needles all over the place and stuff like that. And then, I was reading another decision that just came out recently, the Callaway decision, where they bent over backwards to save a statute that they liked, a criminal statute that they liked. And you know what? Why is it that way? Why is the state Supreme Court that way? For 41 years, we've had only one party in the governor's mansion. So what happened was the governor kept appointing judges. So Oliver Wendell Holmes said the study of the law is the study of history. And I'm sure Dan will tell you this, you got to know your history. If you are involved in drafting the laws, enforcing the laws, you got to know the history. So when Washington State was created, before it was a state, it was obviously a territory. And we had a territorial governor. So the governor had unilateral right to appoint judges. And they realized this was a bad thing because the judges were all his political friends. So they were concerned about corruption, they were concerned about favoritism, they were concerned about political decisions coming from the state Supreme Court. So they mandated in the Washington State Constitution that judges would be elected, that the people would decide. And so what happened, but they also put a clause in there, if there's a vacancy that arises, the governor could appoint, and then the person would have to stand for the next election. So what happened was, over the course of the 40 years that we've only had a certain party in the governor's mansion, is they decided, this is brilliant. Did you know that 70 to 80% of all the judges in Washington State are appointed? What happened was a tradition arose. The governor appoints you, and then before your term is up, you resign, and he appoints so all of you have voted in judge elections, and all you're going to get really is the pamphlet statement. And it's not going to say much, anything. It's going to say where we went to law school, like I belong to Rotary, VFW, and things like that. And so you don't really have, and that's why we have so many undervotes in judicial elections, because people don't really have the information, because we're not allowed to take stands. I can't tell you how I would vote. The big thing is the income tax. I can't tell you what I think of that, any of those decisions, because if I said what I thought about it, then I would be prejudging it. And I can't even do that as a trial court judge right now. I can't tell you how I think about certain things. But I bet if you were to ask law enforcement in Mason County, hey, Judge Stevens is on the criminal rotation. You think that guy's going to get out of jail this weekend? I bet he's not. Hey, you think he's going to have high bail? Yeah, I'm thinking he might. So what they're trying to do is the legislature passes a law, and it has to do with, say, they passed a law, this was decades ago, saying that if you're a juvenile and you're being criminally prosecuted, you get put on probation, that judges can authorize a warrant. So you got some kid who's got a drug problem or something like that. You wouldn't believe how many young women I would see come through the juvenile courts where older men got hooked on drugs. We all know why. And then, so what happened was when they pass a statute like that, the courts, we have to pass what's called the procedure, rules of criminal procedure, how we're going to implement what the legislature has passed. So what they decided was, you know what? We don't like the kids are getting arrested. We don't think kids should be in juvenile detention. So they said the only time we can issue a warrant now is when there's specialized danger. So say it's a kid that's 15 years old and this kid's going out and stealing cars all the time. I don't know. I think it's kind of dangerous for 15-year-olds to be going around stealing cars. It leads to looting cases, things like that. Plus, they're not good drivers and things like that. But we can't issue a warrant because that would only be a general danger. It's not a specific danger to like an individual. So basically, we can't issue warrants. If they violated their probation, the fact that they're not going to get off drugs, that we know that they were suicidal or something like that, well, that's not a specialized danger. So no warrant for those kids. Basically eviscerated our ability to do warrants. Then they really offended me a few years ago. They decided that they thought that there was too much racism in our courts. So what it is they call it systemic racism. I don't know if anybody know what systemic racism is? That's when you really, really study the issue. You can't find any racism. Law enforcement officers, there's always a few bad apples in any bunch, but I would say 99.9% of all law enforcement officers, no way they're racist. So they couldn't find any racists in the prosecutor's office. Sure, there's a few. Any large group, you're going to find some bad apples. They can find it in the court system, but they don't like the outcomes, so they basically said the whole system is racist. So now, if you're a minority, a racial or ethnic minority, and you come to be on a criminal jury trial, and you say, you know what, I don't trust law enforcement officers. I think law enforcement officers are all racist, and they're fabricating evidence, and I would never trust one. Well, if you're not a member of a minority, you get kicked off that jury panel right then and there. But if you're a minority, we're specifically precluded. Even though you're biased, you can't be kicked off the jury. Those are the kind of rules. Now they're proposing a rule where they basically get rid of our bail system, so there'd be no bail bondsmen. They want to destroy the criminal justice system. And that's why I'm running, because somebody needs to call them out. Somebody needs to tell people like you what's going on and what they're trying to do. So I ask for your support. I ask that we have yard signs, we've got literature. Tell your friends, because I am willing to talk out about what they're doing. And I don't think you're going to find any other people running for judge or for the state Supreme Court that's willing to call them out. And I agree with the previous speaker, we need to get out there and we need to actually address these problems. We can't just go, I'm going to be a good judge, I'm going to follow the rule of law. We actually need to address the problems that they're creating. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge. Our next speaker is Andrew Conway. Andrew Conway is a lifelong Washingtonian, veteran law enforcement detective, Army officer, and public servant with more than 20 years of experience serving his community. He was born and raised in North Bend, Washington. Andrew developed an appreciation for service, personal responsibility, and values that continue to define communities across the Pacific Northwest. Today, Andrew lives in Port Orchard with his wife and their 5 children. As a husband, father, military officer, and detective, he understands that public service is ultimately about protecting families, strengthening communities, and preserving the trust citizens place in those who serve them. Andrew currently serves as a detective with the Kitsap County Sheriff's Office, where he investigates serious crimes, including homicide, sexual assault, crimes against children, financial crimes, and other major felony offenses. Since joining the Sheriff's Office in 2017, he has served in both patrol and investigations, working alongside fellow deputies, detectives, prosecutors, and partner agencies to seek justice for victims and protect the community. His investigative experience spans violent crime, crimes against children, financial crime, and complex criminal investigations, providing him with first-hand insight into the public safety challenges facing Kitsap County. For more than 20 years, Andrew has simultaneously served both his local community and his nation through careers in law enforcement and military service. As a lieutenant colonel in the United States Army Reserve, he has led intelligence organizations and advised senior leaders in support of missions throughout Africa and the Middle East. Over the course of 4 deployments to Afghanistan, Iraq, Kuwait, and Somalia, including 2 assignments supporting special operations units, Andrew developed a leadership philosophy rooted in trust, accountability, and shared purpose. He learned that leaders must set the standard, communicate clear intent, develop their people, and accept responsibility for outcomes. Those lessons continue to shape his approach to leadership, public service, and building stronger organizations. Andrew was recently selected for Battalion Commander, one of the military's most significant leadership responsibilities. In that role, he will be entrusted with the readiness, training, welfare, and development of hundreds of soldiers. The selection reflects a career built on service, professionalism, and leadership under pressure. Andrew earned a Master of Arts in Defense and Security Studies from the United States Naval War College and a Bachelor of Arts in Philosophy from the University of Washington. Throughout his career, Andrew has remained guided by a simple principle. Public service is a public trust. Whether serving overseas, investigating crimes, or working within the community, he believes those entrusted with authority must exercise it with integrity, accountability, and humility. His commitment has always been to serve others, develop those around him, and leave every organization stronger than he found it. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Andrew Conrad.
Thank you for that introduction. So yeah, my name's Andrew. I'm thankful to be here tonight. Thank you for Rick for allowing me to speak. I always like a soapbox and a captive audience. I want to talk about a few things tonight. I want to spend a little bit of time talking about leadership. Leadership has been a challenge at the Sheriff's Office in the time that I've been there. We've kind of addressed some of the issues already, but it's kind of an overarching problem that we've dealt with the entire time that I've been there. A lot of the problems that we face are rooted in failures in leadership, just based on my experience. I also want to talk a little bit about crime in Kitsap County for the residents. Anybody up here live in Poulsbo? You better watch yourself. That's where all the homicides are taking place these days, just so you know. All of them Poulsbo. So I'll talk a little bit about crime in Kitsap County, kind of some of the trends that we're seeing, and then maybe some solutions that we can put together when Rick and I take the office. Here. So when it comes to leadership, I think we all kind of have an innate understanding of what good leadership is, maybe from what bad leadership looks like, or what our idea of good leadership has been, or what's been modeled to us. I personally have been blessed to serve in leadership positions at various levels in the military with different organizations over the last 20 years. Perhaps the one that's shaped me the most, as it was mentioned in my bio, is working with special operations. I'm very much a team of teams guy. I like working, I like empowering my leaders. I like empowering people below me to do things because it's less work for me. It makes things a lot more efficient, and it gives them a sense of responsibility and a sense of purpose. The other thing, one particular lesson that I've learned is that good leadership solves a lot of chronic issues, a lot of chronic problems that agencies and organizations face. As it relates to our Sheriff's Office, one of the biggest problems that we've been having in general, and it's not unique to us, but it is a problem, is we have retention issues. We have a hard time holding on to the people that we have, the people that we've trained. Some of it's pragmatic. Some of the Pierce County agencies, for example, are offering like $50,000 bonuses. It's hard to compete with that, right? They get a lot of money.
Not us.
Yeah. Sorry, I wasn't looking over there. But there are agencies that are offering lots of money. You can't really compete with that. But what I would say is, when it comes to retention, part of it is we need to create trust in leaders, right? We need to create trust in the people whom they're working for. Because I know from my military service and even in law enforcement, when you have a good leader, people will die on the hill for those leaders, right? They'll go as far as they possibly can in service of that and in service of their community. I also know that the other thing that's been lacking, at least in the Sheriff's Office when it comes to retention, is developing the people that we do have. Developing leaders at the lowest level, not just at the sheriff or the executive level. Another issue that we deal with regularly is treating people fairly. I know it's a kindergarten scheme. It's something that you learn about on the playground and things like that, but it's not unique to us, right? There is a bit of a good old boys idea, right? And some of the people that have stayed in power continue to pass power down from generation to generation. And it's a kind of a bad gift that keeps on giving, right? It's that white elephant gift that nobody wants. And then the last thing is a sense of value, is they need to feel like that what they're doing matters, and that the people above them, the leaders, the sergeants, the lieutenants, think that what they're doing matters and that they matter, right? And that's reflected in a lot of different decisions. One of the most egregious, I think, that sticks in my mind is we lost a 20-year SWAT guy, highly trained, tactical guy. We lost him because our sergeants and lieutenants couldn't come up with a schedule that works best for him and his wife because they had small children. And to me, that's just unacceptable. That's not something that should have ever happened. The other part of retention is recruitment. So another issue that we need to address, and it's a leadership issue, is recruitment. Lots of agencies are having that issue. But what I do know is when you have good agencies, people don't want to leave, and new recruits that come in see that, and they want to be a part of that organization, not because maybe they don't make the most money, because if that were the case, Seattle PD would be fully stocked and nobody wants to work there. But short of that, everybody will see that and they're like, I'll take a little bit less money. I know I can make more money over here, but I want to work with good people. I want to work with a good agency, people that have my back, and people that take care of me. So it matters. Another good part of it is good leadership is accountable, right? Good leadership is accountable not only to themselves, which I think should be chief among them, but you should also be, you're accountable to the organization. For us, we're accountable to the county. We're accountable to the public, right? Because the public effectively, and this is something I think gets forgotten, the county pays our bills. Right? The public, the people who we work for, the taxpayer. The taxpayer is the one that funds us. So it's in our best interest to take care of the people who take care of us. In addition, everyone needs to be held to the same standard. Standards are different amongst people. Standards are different among organizations. Standards are different amongst teams. But we need to set a standard first of all, and we need to maintain a standard following that. And then lastly on that, ending the leadership piece on a positive note, we also need to reward good behavior. We don't get a lot of rewards. There's not a lot of accolades in law enforcement unless you are the detective that solves the 100-year, the once in a century case or something like that. You get a Netflix deal or something like that. The last thing I want to say on leadership is that I think leadership matters the most in times of uncertainty. And we're very much in a time of uncertainty. Law enforcement today is operating in an environment that is constantly changing, mostly at the legislative level, but also at the lowest level. We have evolving threats and increasing expectations, right? George Floyd did us no service. The whole George Floyd situation was very problematic for law enforcement nationwide. But with all that requires us to adapt. One of my favorite, a long time ago, maybe when I was in high school or something like that, I still have it framed in my office. I got a fortune cookie, you get the fortune cookies, they come out of the little thing. And in my fortune cookie said, life's not about holding all the cards, but sometimes just playing the hand you're dealt. And that's very much where we're at, right? We're not going to have good cards. Certainly not here, but we need to play the good hand well. Anyone can lead when it's easy, but leadership proves its value when it's most difficult, when the light at the end of the tunnel is not so obvious. So what are we trying to solve here? Well, so crime, I'll talk about, there's two major crime pieces that I want to talk about. It's crimes against children, because crimes against children is something that's not really talked about a lot, and it's a massive problem. It is a lot bigger of a problem than I ever thought that it would be, even when I was just working in patrol. Now that I'm in detectives, the mask is off, and there's a lot of nastiness out there that's going on. The other piece of it I want to talk about is drugs. Everybody's familiar with drugs. It's nothing new. But in the service of our children, I think 20 years ago, parents concerned themselves with who their children were hanging out with and where they were hanging out with them, right? Who they were hanging out with, who they were getting off the bus with, what they're doing after school, all that kind of stuff. Back in those days, predators really needed physical proximity. They needed to be near somebody to take advantage of them. There's somebody that was at the school pickup or something like that, waiting at the bus stop, at the grocery store, something along those lines. A child could leave home, go to school, and come home back in those days without any encounters with any strangers. You go to the bus stop, they're with the kids you know. You get on the bus with the kids you know and the bus driver you're familiar with. You get off the bus, you're at school with people you're familiar with, and you do it all in reverse. You can go an entire day not seeing any strangers, right? But nowadays, every child has, just about every child, hopefully not every child, but every child has a communication device. The schools are issuing them to you now, their laptops, right? This gives predators unprecedented access to your children. Predators can anonymously reach hundreds of children at a time now. The grooming occurs without parents ever seeing it or knowing about it, and criminals can operate in another city, state, or in many cases now, in other countries. The internet removed the geography as a barrier. So children today kind of actually live two lives, right? They live an online life and they live an offline life, a physical life, which their physical life might just be in their bedroom for some. And it's having significant effects on the children, mind you. That's a different conversation. Child exploitation investigations have become significantly more complex. Digital evidence and digital evidence processing is now central to many investigations. It's not uncommon for a single investigation to span multiple jurisdictions with multiple individuals from multiple different locations. These investigations are specialized, and the training and tools that are required are also specialized, many of which our sheriff's office does not currently have. The cases are very time sensitive and emotionally taxing. Technology has evolved, and our sheriff's office has not kept the pace. As should be the case with anything in society, children should be the priority. Children are the most vulnerable in our community. They typically lack the knowledge, maturity, and life experience necessary to combat predatory behaviors. The consequences of not addressing these issues in children are often life sentences for our children. Protecting children has always been among the most important tasks that we contend with in law enforcement. The changing environment has made it even more significant. Everyone loves statistics, so here are some as it relates to victimization in children. Individuals who experience childhood abuse are 59% more likely to be arrested as a juvenile, and 28% more likely to be arrested as an adult. Individuals who experience childhood abuse are 30% more likely to commit a violent crime. Longitudinal research has shown that adverse child experiences are strongly associated with other substance abuse disorders, including illicit drug use. Which brings me to my next topic, which is drugs. So we all know about the fentanyl epidemic. We probably see it in the communities. You may even see it driving down Silverdale Way with somebody parked next to you whose face is on their steering wheel. It happens. We deal with it every day. Fentanyl has fundamentally changed the drug landscape. When I grew up in law enforcement, and mind you, I'm still relatively young in the law enforcement world. This is coming up on my 9th year. When I started, it was heroin and meth. Heroin and meth were the chief drugs of choice. Fentanyl is very, very potent. It knocks all of them out of the water. It's very cheap to acquire. It's easily transported and it's easily concealed. But it's also not new. Meth is still the stimulant of choice. We still see that. The cocaine is making a comeback. I don't think it's new to say, but drugs in general tend to drive the crime in our communities in a lot of different ways. You're never going to stop the crimes of passion, the DV crimes, those sorts of things, right? Those are always going to be there for as long as humans are interacting with each other. But the property crimes are the biggest ones that we see with illicit drug use. Burglaries, thefts, shoplifts, all that kind of stuff. That's all related. Car prowls, identity theft, these big identity theft schemes, although some of those are being done by actual nation states. One of the biggest problems that we created for ourselves here in this county is we got rid of WestNet. WestNet was our drug enforcement group. They were federally funded, which was part of the problem. Not to belabor that point, but it was federally funded. Some of the money got pulled, and we ended up just disbanding it altogether. So there's no actual drug enforcement mechanism. Drug enforcement investigations. And what makes drug investigations unique is that drug investigations take a really long time to develop. You have to get sources, you have to develop people, you have to get people that are close to the groups, and you have to get people that are willing to buy drugs, you get them on the hook, you sell drugs, you do all this kind of stuff, right? These sorts of things take months to do. And it's not something that we have the capability to do any longer. That's something that needs to change. Kitsap County has become a hub for drug distribution for the entire peninsula. And we're even getting some down into Tacoma now too, but because Tacoma's actually doing a pretty good job of drug enforcement. But we're becoming a distribution hub for drugs. That's not a good feather in our cap. I don't think anybody up here is proud of that. The other thing that we see, that we've seen a disturbing increase in, because fentanyl comes in pill form, and some of these pills, I don't know if you've seen them on social media, but some of them look like candy. Some of them look like blue or pink or light blue or whatever. But kids are finding these. Just recently, we have a kid, we just made an arrest for a 15-month-old that ingested one and died. Right? At a daycare, by the way. Forgot that part. Yeah. You can do the math on that one. That's hard to figure. Yeah, so these things are happening, and we're seeing an increase in fentanyl-related deaths in children. For whatever reason, we're seeing fentanyl-related deaths in children under the age of 2, which is really concerning. The drug problem isn't going to go away. It's not going to go away. It's going to continue to evolve, right? But the problem is if we don't have an enforcement mechanism to put pressure on them, in the military we call it, they've been granted freedom of movement, right? They can do whatever they want, wherever they want, however they want to do it. And that's not good. So we need to put pressure, we need to continue to put pressure on them. So some solutions. I want to just complain about the situation here. Leadership is among the chief, right? Leadership is one of the biggest problems that we face. It takes strong and courageous leaders to step up and to fight this fight. It's not going to be an easy fight. There's definitely a fair amount of resistance, certainly at levels much higher than I work currently. One thing I would say is in the military, I think a lot of people think leadership is something that people are just born with. It's just like people just have that charisma or whatever, right? Well, in the military, the one thing the military does really, really well is they spend an inordinate amount of time training that skill. It's a skill that they give people, right? And they do it. We do not do that in law enforcement, at least not in the law enforcement that I've worked. We do a terrible job of training people on how to lead, on how to be examples, on how to set the example. We need to get back to it. For the child crimes in particular, one of the biggest things that we can do to help out there is we need to modernize our investigations. Our investigations are going to have to get out of just computers. We're going to have to get out of working out of screens, and we're going to need to get some technology in our backs in order to do this. Because the landscape's changing, it's increasingly going online, and we're increasingly falling behind. And then the last thing, we need to bring back some sort of investigative capacity for drugs to some degree. I think here in this county there is an appetite amongst many of the agencies that I've spoken to set up sort of a metro group of detectives and investigators to go back into drugs. The city of Bremerton is actually doing that to a smaller scale right now, and they've had some success doing it. We need to get back to it as a group. And then the other thing I really, really want to see, and it's a personal passion project of mine, is I actually want to bring DARE back into schools. I still remember the officer who taught me DARE, and I still remember the absolutely disturbing photos that he showed in that class when I was a 5th grader. They stuck with me, and I always wondered why the hell anybody would ever want to do that stuff. And I think others could benefit from that as well. So, I don't think we're doing questions, but if you guys have questions for me, I'd be happy to take them at the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Our next speaker will be Pierce County Sheriff Keith Swank. Sheriff Swank is a seasoned law enforcement officer who dedicated his career to serving and protecting communities with integrity, innovation, and compassion. Sheriff Swank's leadership style is defined by his ability to think strategically, act swiftly, especially in dangerous situations. Whether facing down violent criminals or managing complex operations, he has a proven track record of finding creative solutions that prioritize public safety and resolve conflicts peacefully. His extensive experience as a patrol officer in Seattle taught him not only how to engage with diverse communities, but also how to make rapid, high-stakes decisions in moments of crisis. Prior to his election as sheriff of Pierce County, Sheriff Swank commanded the SWAT team responsible for clearing and securing the Capitol Hill Occupy protest and Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone during the 2020 Seattle riots. One of the many operations that highlighted his decisive leadership in high-pressure life or death situations. During his 15 years as a patrol officer in Seattle, Sheriff Swank rose to the rank of sergeant, overseeing and directly participating in the arrest of numerous violent criminals and offenders. He led a wide range of high-stakes undercover operations, successfully orchestrating the apprehension of many dangerous individuals. In his supervisory role, Swank also managed 911 emergency response operations, overseeing a team of more than 100 personnel. In 2006, as a sergeant, Swank played a pivotal role in de-escalating a tense hostage situation involving a mass shooter at a Seattle Jewish Federation, using tactical communications to defuse the threat and secure a peaceful surrender. Lieutenant Swank served as a watch commander, leading dozens of men and women during the night shift in the Rainier Valley of Seattle. After his tour there, Lieutenant Swank was assigned as the commander of the training section, where he helped develop de-escalation and crisis intervention training that are models for police agencies across the United States. A recognized authority in de-escalation tactics, Sheriff Swank became a subject matter expert for the U.S. Department of Justice, training law enforcement agencies nationwide in crisis intervention and de-escalation. Captain Swank led emergency response teams and served as night duty commander, the highest ranking officer in Seattle during overnight hours. He also commanded the Metro Special Response Section, which includes SWAT, Harbor Patrol, K-9 Unit, and the Arson Bomb Squad. Growing up on a rural farm instilled in Swank a strong work ethic, which he carried with him when he enlisted in the United States Army at the age of 18. He graduated from elite military training, including Ranger School, Airborne School, and high altitude, low opening training. After being honorably discharged from Fort Lewis, he obtained a bachelor's degree in science and psychology from the University of Washington. Sheriff Swank is a graduate of the Washington State Criminal Justice Training Commission and the Northwest Law Enforcement Command College. His commitment to training, transparency, care, and community engagement remains the cornerstones of his service as a sheriff. Ladies and gentlemen, Sheriff Keith Swank.
I'd like to have that whenever you're done, so I can remember all these great things that I did. I didn't even know I did that. So, Rick, before I forget, I want to let you know that when you're sheriff, I'll help you get ICAC up and running, because you need to. We didn't have it at Pierce County. I got it up and running. I made a commitment to do that, and we have arrested some seriously violent animals out there, and we have saved many lives. I'm going to help you do that too, okay? I'm going to take you back 82 years today. Gets me choked up. Some men, when he's 16 years old, climbed on landing ships to land in Normandy. And I think we lost over 2,500 right away. And so every time I think that maybe I've done something good, I look on that and I say, man, I haven't done anything. But what they did for us to give us this country that we need to stand up and fight for. And if you hear anything you want to clap about, feel free to clap, because we're going to be excited here tonight, okay? My dad was a World War II veteran. He was in what they call the Army Air Corps. That's before we had the Air Force. And my dad lied about his age when he went into the Army. I don't know why he lied. He was old enough. He might have lied because he was hiding from a crime he committed. I don't know, but he lied. He has a headstone that has a different date of birth and his footstone that the Army gave him when he died in 1972 at the ripe old age of 49 years old. So I never really knew my dad too much. I was born in '68, but I'm very proud of what he did, and I found out that there's a museum for him and his Army Air Corps down in Arizona. My wife and I stopped down there and saw his name on the wall. My dad, part of the greatest generation, part of the reason why we're free, was involved in a day they called Black Thursday. It was a bombing raid in the daytime in Germany. It's when the military decided afterwards don't do that anymore because we lost so many crewmen then. My dad was a filling guy on the airplanes there, that when I went to the museum they didn't have him assigned to a plane because the people died so often they just rotated you in and out. He got shot down, he lost some body parts, but he lived. I just want to tell you about that because today is the 82nd anniversary of that, and this is a great day to be talking about what we do to take care of and keep our rights and our freedoms here. So I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about some things here to let you know the reason why I'm endorsing this guy for sheriff. A wise politician told me, "Hey Keith, you are the sheriff of the 60th largest county in America. You're the sheriff of 1 million people almost. You are a conservative. You lead the largest area of any conservative in Washington State, maybe in decades. It's larger than a congressional district." I'm not bragging, I'm just telling you what he told me. And he said, when you give up your endorsement, it's like giving up your virginity. Don't just give it to anybody. So I'm not just giving it to anybody. I'm going to give it to special people. I'm giving it to that guy right there. I was a cop in Seattle in 1990. When did you get offered your job there? Probably right before that, huh? 1990. That's the tail end of the hiring spree we had there. Back whenever Seattle was a great place to work at, and we really made a difference in the world. I worked there for 33 years, and I retired in June of 2023. And, you know, I was planning on going to Florida to retire, to get out of this crazy state. I had been run for office many times. Dan, you're still here, right? Did Dan go? Dan knows about that, and I helped him out in his first campaigns, and he didn't win, and I didn't win, and all this stuff, right? And I ran against these people that I didn't really have a chance to win, but I wanted to put a name out there, and I wanted to give people like you all a voice out there, and I wanted to fight for the right things. And so anyhow, I was going to go to Florida, and on August 31st, 2023, I'm sitting in my hot tub, and I look at the stars, and I said, "God, thank you for getting me through this to my retirement, because my wife, even if I die, she'll have part of my pension for the rest of her life. I've taken care of her, and I've raised my kids. I've done a good thing." And he said to me, "Son, you have not been listening to me." And in a loud voice, that he's never told me that before. I've had the little guy on the shoulder saying, "Don't do that," or whatever, right? But I hadn't been listening to him, and he told me, "You need to listen to me." So I jumped out of the hot tub, just like soaking wet. I ran upstairs, probably dripping water everywhere, and I told my wife, "God told me to run for sheriff," and she said, "You better, or you're going to end up in the belly of a whale." So within 7 days, I filed for office to run for sheriff. He never said I was going to win, he said I was going to run. So I ran because when God tells you what to do, you need to obey him. And when I ran, the Tacoma News Tribune made fun of me and said that I had no chance, and they made jokes and said God told me to run, and they wanted to laugh at God, you know. Well, I'm the first person ever elected Pierce County Sheriff from outside of the Sheriff's Office in the whole 153 years of Pierce County being the county. I didn't even know they would be there at all. I just ran because God told me to run, and I won. And then when I won, on the newspaper it said, "God told him to run, and now he'll be your next Pierce County Sheriff." So I called the reporter, Peter Talbot, and I said, "Hey, Peter's a good name for him, he's a dick." Anyhow, I told him, I said, "Hey, Peter, thanks for putting God on the front page of the News Tribune." And he said, "I didn't do it, my editor did." I said, "Well, tell your editor." I said, "Thank you, because maybe that's why I had to run. Maybe God wanted me to make sure he was on the front page of the newspaper," and he was. Amen. bit about what I've been facing. Nothing like D-Day, though. Right as soon as I got elected, the legislature, the county council started passing legislation to try to clip my wings to control the sheriff, because no elected official, except for 2, from any party supported me, because they knew that I was a status quo and they couldn't tell me what to do. No matter what party you're from, you can't tell me what to do. I'm going to do what I believe is right. And so they knew they had to, so they wanted to pass legislation, said I had to get permission from the council to be able to determine who my chain of command is going to be if I don't make any changes to the, to the sheriff's office and leadership, all this stuff. And I got a hold of the prosecutor and I said, prosecutor, they can't do this. I'm independently elected. And she said, no, they can do it. And I brought her the case, Snaza case, and all this stuff to show her that she was wrong, and she still said she was right, and that's when started my problem with her. And if any of you followed it, you would see I've been at odds with my prosecutor since day one. And then the executive issued executive order saying that we had to abide by executive order saying that we can't enter into any contract with any federal agency. That means the FBI or anybody like that without his permission. And I went to her again, I said, this is against the law, it's unconstitutional, you can't do that. She said, no, he can do that. I said, if he can do that, then he can issue an executive order tomorrow that says that I'm no longer a sheriff. And she said to me, no, he can't, you're independently elected. And I said, are you seriously that stupid? How do people elect you, right? People elected her to put people in jail, but then the judge said, no, people elected her to be your legal advisor, because the prosecutor's legal advisor for, I hope you have a good prosecutor here, brother. Anyhow, so, I had these troubles with this, and then the prosecutor said to me, hey, why don't you just do what he says, just go along and get along? That's what I do. That's what she told me. I said, that's not what I do. I'll go along and get along if it's the right thing to do, but I'm not going to do it because you're used to telling the sheriff what to do. And so my haters hate me because of that, right? But the people who support me, love me, and for once they have a voice of somebody out there standing up for them. I went down to Olympia to speak against Initiative 5974, and I gave them some strong talks there, Maybe you saw the video. Somebody said to me, hey, were you nervous? I was like, yeah, I was nervous. I never spoke in front of people like that before, and I said strong words, and I figured they would try to put me in jail. Yeah, I was nervous, but it was the right thing to do. So WASP, the Washington Association of Sheriffs and Police Chiefs, wrote me a letter, and they did an investigation on me to kick me out of the club, but they wrote me a letter of reprimand saying that I shouldn't speak that way, I don't represent them. Well, I told them I wasn't representing you, I was representing people from Pierce County, not you. And so you don't have any right to tell me what to do or anything like that at all. But they did that because they're weak and they're cowards. And many sheriffs in this state are cowards and they're weak. We have them surrounding us around here that are weak, coward sheriffs. We need to have strong sheriffs. Rick will be a strong sheriff. I'm going to get going here because I want him to be able to speak, but I just want to let you all know this, that courage is contagious.
Amen.
I want to hear you say it. Courage is contagious. Be courageous. People look up to you when they see courage. People get a hold of me all the time and say, Sheriff Swank, thank you for being courageous. Thank you for standing up and saying these things you say. And thank you for saying controversial things on purpose just to call them out to say that you're standing up for First Amendment rights. So be courageous. Always be courageous. Courage is contagious. Thank you all very much for being here tonight. I really appreciate you.
Kitsap Rifle and Revolver Club, the zombie apocalypse training with heavy hors d'oeuvres and wine social. Let me just tell you, I went to that, and oh my gosh, it's so much fun. It is so much fun. They do an amazing job. The hors d'oeuvres, Jan does an amazing job as a hostess. So we have the winner. Drum roll, please. Next, we have estate planning, which was very popular. It's very important, and I feel like, you know, at least for me at this age, I'm like, I really need to lock that in, you know. So it was very popular, and this includes, I believe, consultation. She'll work through everything with you. Sweet, sweet lady. There'll probably be wine involved, honestly, because she loves to drink wine. Yeah. Drum roll, please. Thelma and Bob. All right, mine's last. We have Murder Mystery Party with the Kusses. I've also been to this event. And I just want to say, if anyone's ever met my husband, he is amazing at this event. He is like a completely different person. His name's Ted. And if you've ever met his alter ego, Brian, I think he's gay? I don't even know. Very snooty chef, drinks a lot of wine, and hilarious. So, but I heard from him, oh, the music's finally working, that Brian's dead. So I don't know if that's what's gonna happen, but anyway, drum roll please for the murder mystery party. Okay, so this last one is for Happy Hour with Lulu. So I have a mocktail business, so it's a pop-up, we call it Lulu's Lemonade Fresh Fruit Mocktails. And we do pop-ups all over the place, we do private parties, it's so much fun. And I make some kick-ass drinks. So it'll be a party for sure. So the winner of this is, drum roll please, last one. Thank you all so much for all of your donations to Rick. Truly, truly appreciate it. Before we have Bob introduce him, I do want to say that we have 500 signs, and you guys have been hearing me talk about this all night, coming up to you, begging you to help us. If you could please, at some point, reach out to Rick. All I'm asking is for you to take 5 signs. Put them around your neighborhood. If you have friends that want to put them in their yards, that's even better, because they probably won't get stolen. We need that name recognition as much as possible. He's ran already before, so a lot of people do remember him from last time, but it's really, really important that he has those signs all around. If we can infiltrate Bainbridge Island, that's even better. So please, please, please do that. We're also looking for people to host events for him. It doesn't have to be like a big thing like this. We can literally just have like a barbecue and a movie night, and let's just get around and hang out together, and just people that have not seen him before. Because anyone that actually pays any sort of attention to what's going on is going to realize that this man is who they need in a leadership position, right? So a lot of people are not political, a lot of people are not paying attention, but they know their lives, they know that things are not good, right? I mean, yeah, I could go on and on about things, but basically, as a mom of 3 who has to think about, carrying a gun around all day long because I don't feel safe, it's not right. It's not right. So we need changes like all of these guys have talked about. So please help us with the signs, help us with little name recognition, remind people to vote, because you would think that they would, but historically we all know it's pretty low. So anyway, without further ado, here's Bob.
Thanks, Jessica. I think we did. Yep, we already did.
He's got to read the Bible.
So our guest of honor tonight is Rick Kuss. Rick Kuss is a proven leader whose life has been defined by service, accountability, and commitment to protecting others. His leadership has been forged through decades of military service, public safety experience, community involvement, and principled decision-making. Rick and his wife Heather have raised 3 children who all attended Central Kitsap schools. Like many families in Kitsap County, they built their lives here through hard work, service, and community involvement. Rick first arrived in Kitsap County in 1999 while serving in the United States Navy and has proudly called Kitsap the foundation of his family. Rick enlisted in the Navy in 1997 and was sent to Kitsap County to serve in Bremerton in 1999. Rick was commissioned as a naval officer after 10 years of military service and completed a total of 24 years of active duty service before retiring after a distinguished military career in positions of significant leadership and responsibility. Throughout his military service, he led teams in high-pressure environments where integrity, discipline, and sound judgment were essential to mission success. After retiring from the Navy, Rick continued his commitment to public service by becoming a deputy sheriff with the County Sheriff's Office. While attending the Washington State Criminal Justice Training Commission Academy, he was elected president of his class, reflecting the confidence and respect of his peers. He is also a trained mental health co-responder, helping connect individuals in crisis with appropriate resources while maintaining public safety. Rick complements his operational experience with a strong academic background. He earned a Master of Science degree in criminal justice from Michigan State University and is currently pursuing a PhD in criminal justice leadership. His studies focus on evidence-based policing, leadership, and public safety policy. As a strong advocate for public safety and constitutional rights, Rick has testified before the Washington State Legislature on issues involving drugs and public safety policy. Beyond his professional responsibilities, Rick remains deeply committed to serving his community. He and Heather served as co-directors of the Tacoma, Puyallup, and Kitsap chapter of Hope Worldwide, providing humanitarian assistance to vulnerable populations throughout the region. He has also volunteered as a mentor for survivors of human trafficking and sexual exploitation through Scarlet Road. Rick will be sworn in this Monday as president of the Fraternal Order of Police, Evergreen Lodge No. 1 in Kitsap County. He is also a member of the Veterans of Foreign Wars, American Legion, Baltimore Rotary, and the United States Submarine Veterans. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Rick Kuss.
Thank you so much for being here today. It really means a lot to me, especially with kicking off this campaign. This whole year, kind of like a lot different than I originally intended it to be. So I filed in November of last year with the Public Disclosure Commission saying, hey, I'm going to run for sheriff again. And then I met an obstacle I did not see coming. The state legislators, they tried to make it so I could not run for sheriff, so my name couldn't be even on the ballot. And so I'm not new to the whole testifying before the Senate hearing, because back in 2023 when the Blake decision, the whole mess with that, with like hard drugs being completely legal and stuff, because we don't know what to do, all because of a case where the person didn't know they had drugs, they didn't knowingly possess the drugs, and everything got thrown out, and everybody was like, what do we do? So I went there, and I testified about holding people accountable and making sure that the drugs that are infesting our communities, that action be taken. And then that's kind of where I realized that I was like, is anybody listening to me? Am I speaking alone? Because none of them took any advice or any input. They all had their decisions made before we even arrived. And I learned that, I was able to speak at that one, but for this one, with Senate Bill 5974, I put my name first on the list, drove down there with Marcus Carter, and I was planning on testifying. The only one I got to testify in one of the hearings out of all the several ones, but they just would not let me speak. They did not want to hear what the people wanted. And so this became so much more than just running for sheriff this year. It became, we need to let people's rights be heard. Let the people's voice be heard. Especially when it comes to the right to choose who's going to represent them in office. The fact that they want to pick and have a sheriff race that's uncontested just by one person and not letting other people run and not letting the people decide, it's just mind-blowing. So I ran before in 2022, like mentioned, and a lot of people are like, wait, you're running again? Like, didn't you lose? I'm like, yes, and a lot of people take failure as an opportunity to grow. They didn't like that answer either. They thought, no, sorry, you lost once, you can't run again. But that's so many very important people in history. They didn't win on their first time. They lost. They learned their lesson. They ran again. They kept going at it. When they got knocked down, they got back up and they kept fighting. And that's really what this race is all about, is fighting for you, fighting for the community, fighting for us, fighting against government overreach. So I'm so grateful for all the speakers, and I'm so thankful for Sheriff Swank's endorsement. It really does mean a lot to me. And I thank you for Andrew Conway, the detective for Kitsap County. Trust me, it is not easy, like talking to a lot of the Kitsap County deputies and other agencies, to basically go against the status quo and say, I want to support someone that doesn't work in this office. Usually everybody just wants to support someone from the inside, because a lot of people don't like change. But one of the big benefits I have running is the fact that I'm an outsider, and I'm not going to stick to what's been happening and what's wrong within the sheriff's office. After speaking with Andrew, I made a decision that he will be my undersheriff when elected. And gosh, it has just been so, with this whole running for sheriff, and this means so much to me, more than it ever has, because when the people elect me, it's basically telling the government to their face that we get to choose who represents us, we get to choose our sheriff, and not you. And so I'm so excited. I'm not going to talk for long, because I want to encourage you to come to some other events where you may hear me speak a little longer. It's getting late. But like the big things that I'm running on is the whole drug enforcement, the lack of it, and the fact that the Port Orchard police chief just a year ago, 2 years ago, was like shocked that we didn't have anything in Kitsap County, knowing that the cartel comes here and it's like free trafficking because nobody's going to stop them. Well, I'm going to stop them. So. Some sort of drug task force in Kitsap County. And I think one of the other big things that I have going for me is with my education background, I don't kind of look at, okay, what are we doing in Kitsap? What have we done? Okay, let's just keep doing it. I look at all the different agencies in our state, out of our state. What are they doing? When Kitsap shut down WestNet, other agencies continued it. They blamed it some on the funding, but they didn't even apply for the grant in the year that they shut it down. Kitsap didn't apply what other agencies were. So the federal grant did get cut down a little bit, but the fact is we do encourage law enforcement to go after those grants for all that money that's out there. There's been some incidents in the Kitsap County Sheriff's Office where officers have gone out of the way to write grants to get money for funding, and they've been shut down by leadership. Well, I'm going to encourage deputies to be more involved and help change the office to the way it should be. It should be serving the people, and what do the people want, not what the sheriff wants. And that's kind of the big point for me running. And just the other big thing is community policing. I think where I made my mistake last time is using some buzzwords that people interpret differently. So when I ran in 2022, I retired literally the same month that I ran for office. And I was like, the sheriff is a leadership position, period. It's not the deputy that's going around doing traffic stops. The sheriff's not doing that. The sheriff is a leadership position. That's why I ran without zero law enforcement experience. So I got hired by King County, and I've been doing the deputy thing for 3 years in a pretty crime-ridden area, taking in some notes, learning different things. And some of the things that I've been doing over there to help train me and get me ready for Kitsap County Sheriff is the type of community policing that people want. Not just going around and just having your car doing traffic stops in areas or doing area checks. No, it's being out with the community, knocking on doors to high crime areas, talking, listening to their concerns. I had the pleasure to, where I work in King County, there's a little area between Renton, Seattle, and Tukwila called Skyway. And there's some really big, there's a lot of murders that occurred at certain apartment complex, and Cleo over there is one of my partners over in King County. So he came over here. Places that I applied a tourniquet to a gunshot victim, and right down the road, just about a month ago, I went to do a welfare check at a bus stop because, like mentioned previously, a lot of the people on drugs do the nod, so people just drive by. So I got a call there. There was a guy laying down. I went there, turned him over, gunshot wounds to the chest, and no one called in the gunshot. People that heard it, they didn't call it in. They just kept about their day. This is normal business. And so those are the things I'm seeing, but I had the privilege this last week to going to a community meeting. The community resource officer, he's not a commissioned officer in King County. He's just one of those guys that just kind of puts together outreaches. But they have a program where they have the whole neighborhood watch, but they have block captains that represent those neighborhood watches. And so they got all together with the fire department, the sheriff's office. It was just a community resource officer, so I went. And I went there, and they presented some crime maps, the hot spots and all that stuff, and with some stats. And so I was able to go there, break it down for them about, hey, what are we actually facing as deputies in your area, explaining those crime stats. And then the other thing that I gave them my number, my work cell phone number. I'm like, listen, and when we show up on scene and stuff, when deputies show up, there's something called crime prevention through environmental design that I kind of studied at Michigan State. And that's one of the things, like making your area less attractive to criminals. So I was like, just call me up. I'll come over and like, while I'm on patrol, be involved with your community, show you, maybe you should put one of your cameras here, or maybe you should have lighting over here to kind of make it less attractive. And so I'm really being out there, taking the crime reports that our King County Sheriff's Office is doing, and kind of explaining it and listening to concerns. And that brings up one of the other big things with Kitsap County. Kitsap County Sheriff's Office does not have a crime analyst. And I can't explain how important, how vital they are to at least the deputy level and then the community, just knowing like the real data and what's going on. So I know there's a big issue with funding every agency. The county commissioners that hold the budget, they don't prioritize the sheriff's office. So we're experiencing that, all across the state. But you got to be able to do more with less resources. And I think, having that military background and being in situations where I'm asked to do certain things when we don't have resources, but knowing the good that will come out of it, that's where the strength also comes in. It's just the military and just how we've been trained, how it's been mentioned that we've been trained to be leaders, not just, military soldiers, but we're trained to be out there and take the next step, keep working our way up. And that is something that I'm going to be doing 100%. And I've even mentioned that if the county commissioners won't pay for the crime analysts, part of my salary will go to that, because that's how vital it is to me as sheriff to have that, providing that data to make effective decisions based on everything I've seen. So, yeah. Up with just telling you guys how much I really appreciate all your support. And this campaign isn't about me. This is about us and how we need to win this over as a team, as a community. So like Jessica mentioned, the signs, the donations and funds to allow us to send out mailers, to make those phone calls, to let everybody know. Because I found that, being one-on-one with people and hearing what I need to talk about and listening to their concerns and acting upon it is so much greater than any kind of blanket just ad or whatever. They want to hear from the candidate. They want to have that interaction, to know that you are there for them, that we are there to protect their rights to choose their next sheriff, which I am confident it will be me this November. Thank you.
Here, just raise your hand, we'll come around, and Rick will answer for them. Has anybody got any questions or anything they want to address with them? Thank you. Okay, Marcus.
So really quick, I know it's late, so don't feel like you're obligated to stay. You can also talk to us one-on-one. The questions don't have to be just for me. Like Andrew said, he would answer some questions. So if you want to stay and ask some questions, feel free. If you want to leave because it's really late.
Sorry, Rick.
Hey, Rick, I have a question for you. There was a time back with, again, Pat Jones and previous sheriffs we had that they were committed to helping citizens be prepared to defend themselves, even in the event of best case scenario. It still takes a while for a deputy to arrive. The sheriff's department used to work with Kitsap Rifle Revolver properly mentioned a fire alarm, they work with self-defense classes to help them with that. Is that something that you would commit to as a new sheriff, helping people to be prepared for basically holding things off until help can arrive?
I will absolutely help with the citizens and everything with that, and the gun range. So Marcus gave me a tour in 2022 of the Kitsap Rifle and Revolver Club, and some of the things that are back there are, like, I haven't been able to use anything like that, like even in the King County range that we have, or the other local ranges. And I think it's very crucial that we build friendly competition between bringing the military back, having different law enforcement agencies, and preparing everyone to defend themselves and their family at home.
Any other questions?
And I believe everybody in this room, has been addressing their responsibility. I believe everybody in this room has been remiss in their constitutional responsibilities. I have been remiss. We are making headway by interacting with all three of these commissioners, talking about the funding for the sheriff's department. I confronted them and said, the fire department got $149 million to spend all around the county. We're down to 58 or 59 million for the sheriffs. I was speaking to Andrew. What do you think is going to happen when our well-equipped fire department starts going out on calls? I'm not going in there. It's dangerous. And there are no law enforcement officers to back these guys up. That's already happening up in King County. I know several retired firefighters from King County who say they just sit there, let it burn, let the person die. It's not until we interact that we're going to be able to support people like Rick and Andrew. We need to get involved with these politicians and have these hard discussions. And writing letters don't do it. Emails don't do it. You really want to support these guys? Make the appointment with the commissioners. Eye to eye, sit down with them. I've done it many times. Now, I'm a nobody. My wife's a nobody. But I'm telling you, when we call these commissioners, we've got their attention. And these guys are going to need our support. I truly believe God's going to get these people in there. But that isn't where it ends. That's just the beginning. So, my question to you, Rick, how important is it for the constituency to do more than just cheer and actually be interactive with law enforcement and the application of law enforcement to our culture?
Oh, it's very important. One of the things you mentioned is the funding. And so in 2 weeks, the Kitsap County Commissioners are having a public safety funding forum at like South, Central, and North Kitsap. I encourage all of you, because if they think that, if they think no one's there, no one cares, they're just gonna go about their will. But what makes everything here, what makes them hear our voice is when the community shows up in force to tell them, hey, it's not okay that we don't fund law enforcement. It's not okay that you allocate resources to other areas of the county. We, like you said, when there's, in King County, when I go to calls, there's a lot of times that if there's a medical call and there's like history with that house or that apartment, the fire department just stays outside and just waits. So if we're on another like high priority domestic violence call and there's a medical call where someone needs CPR or AED, not having the appropriate manpower affects lives. And so it's so important for each person to be involved. And basically every county commissioner should know your name, just like Allen County. And so I strongly recommend everybody get involved, especially this month, because this month is kind of going to set the tone for whoever is the sheriff, and I will be, but next year. So making sure we have the right money, the right resources, the right amount of deputies. So thank you.